Hey there, YouTube and fellow moviegoers. My name is Eric, and this is my long shot review. Let's get rolling. Alright, so we start out with Fred, played by Seth Rogen, who has recently quit his job because it was bought out by a major conglomerate, and he is always the one fighting the man, so he quits his job and leaves. He unexpectedly ran into his first crush and his old babysitter, Charlotte, played by Charlize Theron, who is now a major political figure in the world. Charlotte hires Fred on as a writer for her political campaign, and though they have very little chemistry, they build a relationship and sparks start to fly. Walking into this, I was a little bit nervous to see Charlize Theron and Seth Rogen on screen together because their past films have been so vastly different. I don't think Charlize Theron has even done a rom-com before, if I'm not mistaken. But what they ended up having in this was really good charisma and a storyline that built a strong relationship that was very comical along the way. I thought it was very interesting and cool to see kind of the role reversal in this movie. Seth Rogen was kind of the Marilyn Monroe to JFK rather than the female to the male. And he was always the damsel in distress. Charlotte was always pulling him out of situations. It was just really good to see in a movie, kind of seeing that being the opposing factor. I enjoyed the supporting cast and thought they fit their roles very well. Like Fred's best friend Lance, portrayed by O'Shea Jackson Jr. Every time they were on screen together, they were just throwing jokes around and they fed off each other really well, and it was just a really good, funny ride throughout the whole thing. It was cool not seeing a male antagonist really in this either. Usually in these kind of romantic comedies, there's always like the better looking guy who, you know, the female's attracted to in a way, and the underdog has to come through. There wasn't much of that in this at all. Interesting take on a rom-com. If you enjoyed director Jonathan Levine's Warm Bodies or The Night Before, you will enjoy this movie as well. We get a lot of messages delivered in this movie, and they used a lot of real and relevant social issues to do so. And in doing that, it just made it feel a little more real rather than you just sitting there watching a movie. It was just easier to relate to certain things that they were trying to push through as they were telling their story. I think a good movie to compare this to in terms of the direction it was going would be She's Out of My League. This is just told in a little bit better of a way. I feel like Jonathan Levine wanted to tell a story about putting loved ones before yourself and helping them through trials and errors. Kind of that, again, that cliche rom-com-esque storyline. But a lot of it wasn't cliche. It felt really new and different. So if you see my Hellboy review, you might remember me mentioning that I thought it was a little silly with some of the transitions they had between scenes because it felt very rom-com. This movie had those because it is that, and it worked very well. Cinematically throughout, there isn't a whole lot to mention. There wasn't any like crazy camera tricks in this movie. There was some here and there that are memorable. There was a very humbling moment for both of the main characters at one point looking up to the sky and showing a big, beautiful scenescape. One party scene where they did try a lot of camera tricks and it did work. But outside of that, again, there's not really much to mention. This isn't an endorsement or a sponsor. I just like drinking beer. Pacing was a little bit slow. I feel like 2 hours and 5 minutes is a little bit chunky of a runtime for a romantic comedy. There was a little bit of empty dialogue and jokes that feel like they maybe shouldn't have been there. Not so much that it hurt the movie particularly bad, in my opinion. Just maybe could have cut some of those out a bit. And as I said, like I feel like there was a little bit too much of the jokes or dialogue in some places. The majority of the film's writing was on point. The jokes were where they needed to be. It was funny in context. It had really good references they had brought in from popular pop culture, you know, a lot of Game of Thrones, Marvel, DC, stuff that we could really relate to as fans to kind of bring us into the storyline a little bit more. As far as special effects go, I'm fairly certain the only computer-generated animation in this movie was like one helicopter scene, and it looked like a helicopter, so. Overall, I was pleasantly surprised with Longshot. I really enjoyed this movie. I went in, like I said, a little bit skeptical because of the cast. It was a lot of fun and it was really funny. I think one trend that I see typically with these kind of movies is they feel a little bit rushed, like they were written quickly or the production kind of went on too long or whatever the case is. I do feel like this was comfortably written and thought out, and they had a long time. I don't know how long it took them to produce this film, but it feels like they had enough time to do so in the right way. It was heartfelt, and it wasn't afraid to bring up certain discussions or topics that other movies might be a little timid to do. I think this definitely is a movie that could be seen by people and get people talking about certain issues that are going on, all while still getting laughs along the way. I'm going to give Longshot a 3-star. I do recommend seeing this in theaters. Bring a spouse, go prepared to have some good laughs. I received the message that was trying to be sent, and though I wouldn't see it again in theaters, in the future, if I ever see it on TV or whatever the case is, I will definitely sit down and watch it again. I will also note that if you take a loved one to see this, be prepared for a little bit of vulgar. You always have to have that with Seth Rogen. And Charlize Theron was a little bit surprising with how nasty she got sometimes in this. I'm going to close this video out by saying, Seth Rogen, I want to smoke with you more than anything in the world. So if you see this, please send me an email. Thank you so much for watching, YouTube. If you like my content, please hit subscribe and that little bell so you know when I have new content coming out. And please be prepared for Tolkien next week, as well as Detective Pikachu. Thanks, guys.